just a story, and that's what I try to think about when I'm writing memoir and receiving feedback is, all in service to the story.
Hello, writers and crafters. I'm Valerie Isan. It is episode 118 of the podcast, and it is June 16th, 2023, as I record this. Once again, Eric and I didn't meet for our regularly scheduled recording of the podcast because of weird appointments and travel. So I am slipping in an interview that I did probably 2 years ago. So interview with the memoir coach is the main topic for today. I just wanted to pop in here though and give you some updates and some announcements. We want to thank all of our existing patrons for believing in us and in the podcast. Our podcast is sponsored by our patrons at patreon.com/Valerie Isan. And for as low as $1 a month, you can get a postcard from me, a shout out on the podcast. We can make announcements for you. And the other tiers increase in benefits, and I'm going to talk about that in just a minute. So one of those things on my announcement list is we do have a free 7-day trial of the Mary Poppins fan tier on Patreon. It's regularly $15 a month. So if you go to patreon.com/Valerie Isan, you can see what the Mary Poppins tier includes. One of those things is a weekly 15-minute Zoom call that we can use for accountability purposes or like answer a quick question kind of thing. So that happens weekly at the $15 a month tier. And you can try that for 1 week free. I have started a new memoir called Eco Expat, Moving from One America to Another, and I will be rolling out the chapters as I write them on Patreon, so that is another benefit that you will get even at the $1 tier. You get early access. Feedback is definitely encouraged. So if you're interested in seeing kind of like how a memoir is written, that would be a fun benefit for you. Another tier that I wanted to highlight today is called Focused Fan. That's $50 a month, but what that includes is a group mastermind call once a month for an hour long. So basically it's kind of group coaching that you can get for $50. And it also includes weekly one-on-one 15-minute accountability calls and emails and a monthly scene analysis. So my regular group coaching price is $500 for 3 months. And that meets weekly and does not include any feedback on words, like if you turned in words. If you were to look at the monthly rate, it works out to about $167 a month. So that $50 a month for one group call is another price point option for you. So I have lots of options at patreon.com/Valerie Isan for coaching. So if you are not able to pay the regular author coaching / book coaching price of $500 a month for individual coaching, or the $500 a month for 3 months at the group coaching price, then you still have a lot of options at patreon.com/Valerie Isan. So please go there and check it out. And if you've got any questions or you just need to brainstorm some ideas about how you can afford coaching, then please email me, valerie@valerieisan.com, or you can email the podcast, writercraftpodcast@gmail.com. And my last, 2 more announcements. We still have a shared lodging ticket available for the retreat, August 24th through the 27th in Marcola, Oregon. It's an all-inclusive lodging, meals, coaching, instruction, all of the above comes at $650. And we're looking for a woman identified person to share a teepee with 2 twin beds in it. Plenty of other spaces for privacy and writing. And it's a glorious place. I really hope that you'll take advantage of this one last ticket at $650. Also, I am going to start a new group coaching cohort in the fall after summertime. I find people are traveling too much and they just can't commit to any time during the summer because of so much craziness. Kids are out of school and there's traveling and just camping and fun stuff for the summer, taking advantage of the sunny months, especially in the West Coast in Oregon and in Washington in the Pacific Northwest, where it stays not sunny for a long time. So the group coaching cohort starts September 12th through December 12th. That's going to be on Tuesdays. I don't have a time set up because I like the cohort to pick the time that works best because we're all spread out across the globe. So I want to make sure that everyone has an opportunity to join us live for those weekly group coaching calls. And that's going to be, again, $500 for 3 months. And if you go to my shopping page, you can type in the discount podcast, and that will give you that discount code podcast will get you a 10% discount. Okay. My author update is basically all I did last week was travel and party. So my husband turned 50 on Saturday. So basically all last week, well, from Thursday last week to Wednesday this week, we were just celebrating. We had friends from out of state come in. We had a party. We did a camp over. We took a train to Seattle, stayed with some friends, and did a bunch of, there was boat rides and museum tours. And so it was pretty much nonstop celebration. So that was really fun. But right now I'm just sort of picking up the pieces from that and working through my backlog of tasks. While I was traveling, I finished up The Invisible Life of Addie LaRue by V.E. Schwab, and I started listening to Gigi Listening. That's actually an audiobook I'm listening to. It comes in paperback too, but I'm listening to the audiobook. It's a romance. I just wanted something light for the travel and the train trip. And yeah, I think the next book on my list was also a YA contemporary, not romance. Again, keeping up with the for the vacation vibe that I wanted to hold on to a little bit longer. All right. Well, I think we should just get into the interview with a memoir coach.
All right, I am here back for our membership spotlight with the lovely Valerie Isan. Valerie is a novelist, a memoirist, an editor, and a part-time bookseller. Did I miss anything?
Podcaster.
Yeah.
Other stuff too. Dog lover. I don't know.
You don't have the dog in the backpack today.
They're both sleeping. Yeah.
Oh,
we'll hope they stay that way and not bark during this.
So when did you start writing, Valerie?
3rd grade.
Yeah. I was like, I get the feel from you like that this is like me. This has just been one of those things that's been always.
Do you know, I never really took it seriously though. And I remember in my 20s having that angsty, like, I wish I had something that I could do that would help me express myself, and my sister was the artist, and, I gravitated towards musicians and thespians and, anybody that can express themselves to their art. And I didn't feel artistic at all. And I remember writing copious journals about how I just had nothing to express myself until one day I was like, oh, wait a minute.
So what got you, Was that the moment when you like kind of started taking writing seriously for you, or was there some time
That's when
later?
I began the angsty part of, gee, I
Excellent.
wish I could be a writer, and, like thinking. So it was like 4 steps back from aspiring writer. It was more like, oh, look at that, thing way over there that I could never be. And then when my husband at the time died, I went looking for a book that I could read
Mm.
that would make me, feel better or understand what I was going through. And there really wasn't any. And that was when I was like, oh, well, after this is all said and done, maybe that's the book that I'll write. So I guess, that was mid-20s. So, or
Yeah.
later 20s.
And is that a story that memoir is one you're still working on right now? Yeah. Or have
No,
you
that
written
was
it in
the
bits and
first.
pieces? Okay.
No, that was the first memoir. I published that. That's called Smell the Blue Sky.
Okay. Excellent. And then how did you get into editing and book selling?
Well, book selling is that that romanticized idea of, all writers have, or all readers have really, oh, wouldn't it be great to work in a bookstore and, have charming conversations with customers and read in the corners when people aren't in the store, which is totally not the way it really is. But I was a licensed massage therapist for many years, and that kind of got too hard on my body. And I thought, well, hey, maybe I'll just do this other part-time job where I'm not trying to have two conflicting businesses, the author business and the massage business. And I kind of thought I could streamline my attention and have it be all literary focused, and that would be easier. And then also being an employee would be easier to like walk away and not have to, drum up clients.
Yes.
In that side of the business. And then how I became what was the other question?
Editor. Yeah.
Oh, an editor. Oh, well, actually that started from being in a critique group for like 10 years,
Nice.
and doing line editing for 10 years every week for everybody else's manuscripts. And then, one day a friend said, can you like look at my whole book and help me with it? And somebody else said, hey, I'm writing this college essay submission, can you just edit it and make sure it's okay? And so then the wheels started turning, and that's how I started
Nice.
editing.
Well, your area of expertise as an editor, as a podcaster, I believe as well, though, you have a lot of expertise in memoir, because I think this is from those journals. It's what you've been doing the longest.
Yeah.
So what are some of the first things that someone needs to think about when they are writing a memoir or thinking about writing a memoir?
I think editing. What I mean by that is, instead of writing about your whole life, picking those events, like, I don't know, 3 to 5 like major events, or maybe even just one. It depends on how eventful that big event was, and curtail the story that you're going to tell to those things. So I guess coming up with those is probably the first thing. For instance, if you were in the army and that was like totally against your family's upbringing and they didn't want you to join the army, so maybe it could be a story about why you decided to join the army, and the obstacles that you faced with your family to enlist, and then what it was like to be there. And was it all what it was cracked up to be? Was it what you expected? So maybe that could be the story. So it's not like your whole life, it's just that little bit there. And then there were some events along the way that stood out in your mind that you wanted to make sure was in the book. So you could come up with that, those events that you want to put in the book. Structure wise, you can decide if you want to write it as a narrative arc, like a novel, or if you want it to be in essays, like linked essays. And I think it's really important to have a theme. Like, why is it that you're telling this story about joining the army? Like, what's it really about? What's the underpinning statement that you are saying? and that takeaway message that a reader will be like, oh, I'm so glad I read that because I learned this.
Do you find discovering that message easy for you? Does that come easy?
I think per project, it's different.
Mm,
So my first memoir was easy. I wanted to connect with other young widows and talk about how grief was, just to normalize the grief and have it not be a shameful thing. And so it was, yeah, it was really just about like a person's grief journey and normalizing it. And then the one I'm working on now went through several iterations, and I'm still at a cusp of changing it again. Like, oh, it's really about this. The more you write it and the deeper you get, you realize, oh, actually, this is what it's about. So this one's a
yeah.
little harder. The first one was easy.
I like all different forms of memoir. I've liked the kind of narrative version where it reads like a novel. I've liked the essays, and um, I found it interesting when I read Rachel Herron's Fast Draft Your Memoir, when she talks about her A Life in Stitches.
Mhm.
Um, Her framework for that wasn't necessarily an overall message initially for the whole book, but that she was going to write stories about the different sweaters that she had knit. And so
Mhm.
it was, her intention originally was like, oh, this will be a fun book for other crafters to enjoy. But then as she went through
Mhm.
they all ended up with a unifying theme, because that's what we're wired, one, as humans to do, but especially as writers.
Yeah, looking for those patterns. For sure.
Yeah. What else do you find that beginning memoirists might have difficulty with?
Separation for sure.
Mhm.
Especially when you're receiving feedback. So it's hard enough to receive feedback from editors or beta readers about your work, but then when it's about your life experiences, then it can get a little, you tend to be maybe a little more defensive.
Mhm.
So being able to excuse me, being able to have as much separation as you can create is helpful so that you can receive that feedback constructively and professionally. And so sometimes it's as easy as just using a different pronoun. When you and I were talking about one of my scenes,
Mm,
we would, every once in a while I'd slip into the I pronoun, but I would always correct myself. And you're talking about the character that's on the
yeah.
page, not the I. So that's important. I mean, sometimes you have like the one I'm writing right now, there is 15 years separation already. So
Mhm.
it's not as, it's just a story, and that's what I try to think about when I'm writing memoir and receiving feedback is, all in service to the story. So it's less about, yeah, it's not about me being critiqued at all as the person or the writer. It's just, the story. And does the story have the emotional tone? Does the story have the pacing it needs? Does the story have the dialogue it needs? And
Yeah,
I,
as someone sitting in the editor chair when we were talking, um, I found that I changed a lot of the language I was using as well, because we are talking about things that actually happened. And so it's not like, well, does this make sense for this to happen here? It's, does it make sense to include this? Does this add
mm-hmm,
to the message that you're trying to take? Or I don't understand what the motivations were here. Maybe that needs to be added to and built up, because you as the writer know that character, that former
mm-hmm,
version of you that you're writing
mm-hmm.
so clearly. Um, and the rest of us don't. Like, what are the thoughts that you had there, forcing you to say, well, what were those thoughts 15 years ago?
I think another problem that young memoirists, not young as an age, but like people that are just starting into
Mm-hmm.
that genre, struggle with the, the character arc part. So
Mm-hmm.
it becomes this um, episodic like journey, or like, oh, I just want to tell the story about how this happened and then this happened and then this happened. And there is no like, I mean, there's a through line because it's chronological probably, but like there's no point to it,
Mhm.
So coming up with the point or the theme is important, but also the character journey. So there has to be change in the book. All books have to have character change. Well, most of them. There are some small exceptions, but so coming up with, like, for example, the enlisting story, so what was the character flaw, at the
Mhm.
beginning that dies at the end, or, what was the impetus to join the army? What was the struggle to get through it, and how was the character different at the end of the story than at the beginning? So that has to be put in there too. And that's harder, I think, for some memoirists.
Easy. I think one of the things I have difficulty comprehending along those lines is this idea of a success point, right? Like a finalized version of yourself at some point, a crystallized version where you're like, aha, that is where I did reach the end of an arc because I reached a form.
Mhm.
When we look back and we see so much of our lives, we're just like, we see the mess that it truly is. um and you're
So
like,
the editing
well,
comes in.
yeah, exactly. You're like, well, yeah, I succeeded in XYZ there, but I was such a mess. Like, how do I make that point in my life be the end of a story? And I haven't found an answer like that. I haven't managed to do that successfully.
Well, I think you said it before. You're talking about the version of you that
Mhm.
was. So
Yeah.
past person, you can, because you're not writing an autobiography, you're not taking it to the end
Mhm.
of your life. So it's just the end of who you were at that point. It's just that snapshot, it has the edges to it. And 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 I think coming up with that structure at the beginning before you start really making the book will be
Mhm.
helpful. I mean, you can, obviously there's probably the journal entries and, dabbling in essays and writing stories down, but coming up with that structure at the beginning, I think helps, with the ultimate manuscript
Yeah.
construction.
Well, as we wrap this up, will you share with us what you are working on currently?
My second memoir, I keep thinking it's almost done. And then, of course, I find lots of other things to do to it. So it still has several more revision rounds, I think. And, but that's going well. Right now, I'm excavating old journals to find that raw material because I think it needs a little more emotional depth than it
Mhm.
does before or currently does. And I've started dabbling in voiceover narration. I'm super interested in that right now and looking at ways to narrate audiobooks and putting up profiles everywhere. So that's exciting.
Excellent.
It's kind of taking up some mental creative space right now, which I'm enjoying.
I'm sure. Yeah, learning and creating are takes such similar spaces in my brain as well.
Number one input on the strengths test. So I like getting all of it and I love learning. Learning isn't in my top 10 though. I'm totally
It's
shocked that it's
interesting.
not in my top 10, but I think the input and yeah,
Yeah.
the intellection.
Well, thank you so much for joining me. And
Thank you.
to our community who is watching or listening, please give Valerie a shout out after you take a listen to this.
Bye.